This Orioles season so far has certainly not gone the way we thought. I know you all probably have questions about what is going on. Well, we opened the mailbag. A live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is coming up right now.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. Or if you are listening after the fact, it is Friday, May 23rd, 2025. And welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are opening up the Orioles mailbag, and we are live here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel on a Thursday evening. If you're joining us live, thank you so much for jumping in. And if you do have Orioles questions, we're going to be answering them live throughout the show. Throw them in the chat right here on YouTube, and I will try to get to every single question that I can over the next 30 minutes or so. We'll also get you ready for the 4-game series between the Orioles and the Red Sox that starts on Friday. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So it'll be a live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. If you do have Orioles questions, please throw them in the chat and we will get to them throughout the show. I did want to kick off with just a quick series preview, Orioles and Red Sox, before I get to our mailbag questions. A few of them already coming in already, because this mailbag was kind of impromptu. There was supposed to be an Orioles game starting in about an hour at Fenway Park. Would have been game 1 of 4 between the Orioles and the Red Sox. But if you think the weather's bad in Baltimore right now, it is worse up in Boston. It was a very early postponement of that game, and the Orioles and the Red Sox will play a doubleheader on Friday to kick off the 4-game series. So a quick look at this weekend in Boston. This Red Sox team 25-26 on the year. The Orioles at 16-32. The Sox are a little underperforming, not to the level that the Orioles are, but not having their greatest of seasons. It'll be a split doubleheader on Friday, so it'll start with a 1:35 game on Masson. Right now, the Orioles have listed Cade Povich, who was supposed to start tonight's game, as the game 1 starter against the right-hander Brayan Bello for the Red Sox. Bello, who has a 4.02 ERA and 6 starts this season, but is coming off a disastrous outing. 10 hits, 7 runs, and 4 1/3 innings his last time out against Atlanta. Then game 2, again, with a split doubleheader. It'll still be a 7:10 start on Friday night for game 2. Looks like Lucas Giolito will still be the scheduled starter in that game for the Red Sox. The Orioles are listing TBD. Initially, Charlie Morton was planned to be the Friday starter, with Povich starting Thursday had that game happen tonight. So it looks like Povich will go game 1. My guess will be that with the Orioles in the middle of this long, almost 3-week stretch without an off day that they're in here in May, this will be their second doubleheader in the last week and change. Remember, they had one last week at home against the Twins. That's when they called up Chase McDermott as the 27th man to start one of those games. So the Orioles, because they have a doubleheader on Friday, will get the ability to call up an extra 27th player for the doubleheader. And like they did with McDermott last week, I have a feeling the reason why it's listed as TBD for game 2 on Friday is that they're going to take advantage of that. When you have a doubleheader and you just continue on with your same 5 starting pitchers in order, it catches up to you, because now you have 2 guys pitching on one day, and the next time that their spot comes up in the rotation, it becomes tough to still have everyone on regular rest if you don't have off days in the schedule. And remember, the Orioles right now do not have off days in their schedule. Now, Chase McDermott could theoretically be recalled to be the 27th man, but obviously he's not going to be ready to start. He just pitched a couple of days ago in Milwaukee on Tuesday. He's not going to be ready to start on Friday. If they don't end up going with Charlie Morton, I think there is a chance we will see Trevor Rogers make his 2025 Orioles debut in game 2 of the doubleheader on Friday. Rogers last pitched on May 16th. So that was last Friday night for Norfolk. 4 1/3 innings of 4-run ball, 5 strikeouts, and 2 walks. His velo was up over 94 miles an hour, which is really a good sign for Rogers. Of course, the Orioles acquired him at the deadline last year, didn't pitch well for 4 starts, was sent down to AAA. Then this year, he suffered a knee injury in the offseason, kept him out for all of spring, but he's built himself back up. He's made a few rehab starts. Now, overall, he's made 5 starts in AAA. He's kind of fully back and built up and ready to go. And the Orioles, I mean, they have him through 2026, but at 16-32, they got to kind of see what they have in Trevor Rogers. My guess, again, would be that they go with Rogers on Friday. No guarantee that that would happen, but right now, Norfolk is set to play a doubleheader here on Thursday. Thaddeus Ward and Roansy Contreras are the scheduled starters in those 2 games, so you wouldn't have to move Rogers from there. He is currently, as I'm kind of looking through the Norfolk probables, he is currently scheduled to pitch Friday night for Norfolk in St. Paul, Minnesota. So the Orioles would just have to get him from St. Paul to Boston probably right now and scratch him from that Norfolk start to potentially start him on Friday. And then you maybe just move back Morton, Eflin, Kramer, and get them an extra day of rest as the Orioles sit here in this long stretch with a multiple doubleheaders and not a lot of built-in off days. Then you go to Saturday. Right now, it's supposed to be Zach Eflin for the Orioles at 4:10 against Hunter Dobbins, the 25-year-old rookie right-hander with a 3.62 ERA in 6 starts. He allowed a run over 4 2/3 his last time out against the Mets. And then it would be Sunday at 1:35, Dean Kramer for the Orioles and Walker Buehler for the Red Sox. Buehler, who had a little dust up with an umpire in Francisco Lindor and was actually ejected from his last start. He threw 2 1/3 scoreless, but then was thrown out of the game. So we'll see how Buehler will respond if he does make that start on Sunday. In terms of how the Red Sox look so far this season, again, 25-26, they kind of felt like the team that, or at least one of the handful of teams that won the offseason. And 25-26 has probably been a little disappointing in Boston. Now they are without Tristan Casas. There's been the issues with what position Rafael Devers is going to play on this team. That is certainly laid into this. Their pitching has not really been what they wanted to be. In terms of their hitters, though, Alex Bregman's been incredible. They brought him in. He's got a 158 WRC+. Rafael Devers, despite all the distractions, has also been awesome. Rob Refsnyder is just crushing lefties again. And then Wilyer Abreu has been really, really good, too, who was in that Rookie of the Year race in the outfield last year. He's following it up with a great season. On the flip side, Cedar Rafael is struggling. Trevor Story is struggling. And Tristan Casas was struggling before he went down. So this it's kind of a top-heavy Red Sox lineup right now that we're seeing. Christian Campbell, kind of the wonder kid, has just been okay. He's been striking out a whole lot so far this season. In that Red Sox bullpen, the guys you will see, it's Aroldis Chapman, who is at the end of the pen for this team. He's been, good, pretty good. He's got a sub-2 ERA. He's got a 34% strikeout rate. He has been generally locking things down at the back end of games. Justin Wilson, Brennan Bernardino have both been good out of that bullpen. They've got some solid relievers that they can turn to for the Red Sox. And in terms of just as a team, hitting-wise, they are 11th in team WRC plus this year. They are 7th in runs scored as a team. So we knew this coming into the year. It is a pretty solid offense that they are going to send out there. As a bullpen, their ERA is 12th, not too shabby right there. And as a starting rotation, it's been kind of up and down. Obviously, they haven't had the issues that the Orioles have had, but they do still have just the 24th best rotation ERA on the year. The Orioles, who dropped 2 of 3 against the Red Sox at home in their home opening series back at the end of March and beginning of April, will get 4 games on the road against the Red Sox coming up this weekend. And we'll see if the O's, after winning in Milwaukee Wednesday to snap that 8-game losing streak, can turn something into a winning streak this weekend. But that's your little Orioles Red Sox preview with the doubleheader Friday and then games on Saturday and Sunday. Let's take a quick break here. When I come back, we will get to those mailbag questions. Throw them in the chat right here live on YouTube, and I will answer your Orioles questions coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot, like Tyrese Halliburton, a breakout player, kind of like Tyrese Halliburton, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game. Before tip-off, and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You can get a lot of different bets. I bet no one would have bet that Aaron Nesmith would hit 8+ threes in that Pacers comeback on Wednesday night in Game 1, but that's something you can find over at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. You can head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So it is a live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. Thank you everyone who is joining us live here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and throw those comments in the chat with your mailbag questions for the day. And we're going to kick it off with a question from Robert, who asks, what are Jackson Holliday's chances of making his first All-Star game this season? Really good question, because despite the Orioles being bad, this is something we remember from the really, really bad rebuilding Orioles, every single team still has to have an All-Star representative. Now, generally for bad teams, they just kind of like find a reliever who's been good and go from there. The Orioles don't really have that. You know, Cano's had his struggles, Bautista struggling a little bit lately. It's probably not going to be that reliever. And to be quite honest, I mean, unless Sugano gets the nod, it's probably just not going to be a pitcher in general with the way the Orioles pitching has struggled all year. So more than likely, if the O's do get just one representative, it will probably be a hitter. And I got to tell you, Jackson Holliday has a really good shot of being, if not the starter, at least a second base representative in the All-Star game. If you go minimum 100 plate appearances among AL second basemen, Holliday is sixth with a 120 WRC plus. But here's the thing. Above Jackson Holliday in those rankings, and 100 plate appearances is not an everyday player, but guys who have played most games this year. The 5 players above Jackson on that list are Daniel Schneemann of Cleveland, Dylan Moore of Seattle, Luis Arias of Oakland, well, formerly Oakland, and Chase Mydroth of the White Sox. Those are 4 of the 5. The other is Gleyber Torres in Detroit. Now, I could see Gleyber Torres absolutely being voted in as the starting second baseman in the American League, but those other 4 are just not going to have the name recognition that Jackson Holliday is going to have when being voted on by the fans or being voted on by the other players in the league. I don't think Holliday will be the starter at second base, but he is good enough where I think he's got a really solid chance of making the All-Star team this year, because behind Torres, you have a strong argument to say he's maybe been the second best second baseman in the American League. And obviously the Orioles will have some other candidates, right? Despite the slow start, like Gunnar Henderson is certainly going to have a push here to get to the All-Star game. He's one of the stars in the game right now, and there's a pretty solid chance he would get there. And then Ryan O'Hearn and Cedric Mullins, I mean, both have chances as well to represent the Orioles, but do not sleep on Holliday. I think there is a good chance there. Question from Carol here. Any chance the Orioles squeak into the playoffs? Well, I'm never going to say absolutely not. There is definitely still a chance here, but I got to say the chances are incredibly low. At the moment, I believe from FanGraphs, the Orioles playoff odds currently sit at 1.9%. So we'll round it up to 2%. There's about a 2% chance from FanGraphs the Orioles would get in. It's a chance. It's not a very good chance. A 16-game under 500 hole here in late May, such a large hole to dig out of. I can't see it happening. I'm not going to fully point it out, but it's tough to be this far behind. Question here from Kyle. If you could trade for any starting pitcher, what would that trade look like? If I could trade for any starting pitcher, I mean, I'd go get Paul Skeens. Now, I don't, even as dumb as the Pirates are, there was just a report the other day, the Pirates are not trading Paul Skeens, at least not now, and they should not. They should absolutely not trade Paul Skeens. But again, if I could trade for any starting pitcher, I would go and get Paul Skeens on this Orioles team for a long time. That's just probably not something that is realistically going to happen. The deal that I would do for a trade right now is the Orioles are not in the position to win this year. Again, it could happen. They could turn around, but at 16-32, they're not going to be buying rental type pitchers. They're not going after the Dylan Cease, the Michael Kings, the Framber Valdezes of the world. It's closer to a Luis Castillo's type in Seattle, guys who have multiple years of team control left. And that's why I'd be targeting guys more like a Pablo Lopez, a Luis Castillo. But who knows if those guys are, even going to be dealt at this point. That's the other question here where, are you really going to be able to get any of these guys? Because the Orioles are just going to be so down bad. You can't really make a trade like that during the season when they are simply on better teams. So I think all in all, I'd like to go get Sandy from Miami because he's also on a rebuilding team. Now, other teams that are in it this year are going to be trying harder to get Sandy Alcantara, but he is signed through 2027 for pretty cheap. If he's a workhorse, yeah, it hasn't been perfect coming back from Tommy John. He's had a rough time. He's got almost an 8 ERA this year and 9 starts, but maybe he's a buy low candidate in that sense, and he could really help this Orioles rotation moving forward. Adit with another pitching question. Do you think they trade for a Mitch Keller type at the deadline? Adit, if they are going to go after major league players at the deadline, I do think Mitch Keller is someone who could fit the mold for the Orioles. Keller, obviously on the Pirates, having just as terrible of a season as the Orioles. They have also fired their manager already this year. They're not making the postseason, and they're probably going to make some trades. Keller is signed through 2028. So if you acquired Keller at this year's deadline, you'd have the rest of this year plus 3 more seasons. He's still got 3.5 years of team control you would get on a starting pitcher who is not necessarily fully on the upswing. He's a 29-year-old righty at this point. Now, he does have a 3.88 ERA this season, and if he finishes that off strong, it would be his best full season ERA of his career. He's been good through 10 starts this year. The best version of Mitch Keller we've probably seen since 2022. So that is certainly a good thing to look at. The strikeouts are down, but the walks are still down, which is a good sign for Keller. That is someone I would target. Someone who, at his best, he's in the mid 3s. At his worst, he's still a low 4s ERA who will give you 30-plus starts every single year and be a really good middle rotation guy and could just help stabilize what the Orioles have in the rotation. So yeah, Adit, it would be a weird move if both the Pirates and the Orioles are both out of it and they're making a deal like that for Mitch Keller. But the O's should have their eyes on being competitive again in 2026 and beyond. And that move for potentially a Mitch Keller would definitely help them in that scenario. Let's see. Another question from Adit, a good one talking about pitching. Rank these free agent pitchers from most interest by Elias to least. Framber Valdez, Michael King, Dylan Cease, and Zach Gallen. I am going to put Dylan Cease number 1. It's just the high octane stuff that he has. There's still some questions with him. Number 2, I would say Framber Valdez. It's a lefty, a guy who Elias knows from his days in Houston. Number 3, I would say Michael King. I love Michael King. I have no idea what a player like that is going to get in free agency, kind of coming on late, having 2 really good years before hitting free agency as a starter. Before that, he'd just kind of been a good reliever. Like, who knows how long his arm will hold up, as he's actually a couple days from now turning 30, so he'll be 30 when he hits free agency. I have no idea what his contract looks like. Last, I would put Zach Gallen, because Gallen looked like an ace a couple of years ago, and now there's a few holes being poked in his game. He had an up and down year last year. He has a 5.14 ERA in 10 starts this year with the Diamondbacks. The stuff is down. The walks are up. I would steer away from Zach Gallen at this point, but I would say Cease, Valdez, King, and then Gallen. B-Man with a question here. Who should the Orioles target to acquire as sellers at the deadline? It's something I talked about earlier this week, that the O's at this point probably are going to be at least soft sellers at this year's trade deadline, not blowing it up, not rebuilding, but trading away some of their expiring free agents, guys they're not going to bring back in the offseason that could help other teams and can get them some players back. What they should target is players as close as they possibly can to the major leagues, because the Orioles are not going into a rebuild. More of a retool, if it's even that. This is still a roster that can absolutely compete and get to the postseason and maybe beyond in 2026. They need to make some tweaks to the roster and improve it, but it's not far-fetched at all to say this team could turn it right around and be good again in 2026 after kind of a lost bad season potentially here in 2025. So what they should go after is there should be no prospects that they acquire that are below the AA level, unless it's like a throw in with other players. It should be guys in the upper minors, potentially guys with even a little bit of big league experience. If they have room on the 40-man roster for them, that's fine too, who can help them down the stretch this year, who can help them next year. Specifically interesting AAA, AA type arms are the guys I would be going after in these kind of trades. Question here from Don't Mind Me, I'm just spectating. No longer spectating, though. Jumped in with a question. Is Kyle Stowers actually better than Heston Kjerstad, or is it the situation / the environment for both of them? This is a very, very good question that I could probably dive into even further on a full episode right now. Let's at least kind of compare the stats between the two. Now, the entire time those two guys were in the system with the Orioles, Heston Kjerstad was just straight up a better prospect, right? He had been seen as a better hitter. Stowers always seen as a better defender, but Kjerstad's bat was just seen to have such a higher ceiling than Kyle Stowers that I think it got to the point where, yeah, Stowers could be good, but we're much more confident Kjerstad will be good. Now, obviously, they are having very much opposite seasons this year. Kjerstad slashing 203, 252, 331 for a 66 WRC plus, and Stowers has been incredible. 309, 380, 556 for a 155 WRC plus. Stowers has about 60 more plate appearances than Kjerstad because Stowers on a terrible Marlins offense is an everyday player. Kjerstad's been a little bit in and out, playing a good amount, but more so in and out in this Orioles lineup. I mean, Kjerstad's got more raw power. I think he's got a better hit tool. He actually does have a lower strikeout percentage than Stowers does this year. Kyle Stowers is also running a 396 BABIP so far this year. It's a lot of good luck headed his way and is probably going to come back to earth a little bit. Age-wise, I mean, Stowers is 27. Kjerstad is 26. They're basically a year apart in age. And again, Kjerstad has looked so bad defensively that although Stowers can't really play center field, he's fine in the corner outfields versus Kjerstad. So I don't know. I can't answer this fully at this point. Right now, Kyle Stowers absolutely looks like the better player. Give it a year or so when they both get a full leeway of playing to make this decision. And obviously the environment is much better for Stowers, right? There's no pressure on him. He can play every day. It's whatever. Kjerstad is in kind of a rough clubhouse right now, probably with all the losing, and there's pressure on him. And he knows, hey, I'm playing right now because Tyler ONeal and Colton Cowser are on the injured list. If they both come back, I could be sent down to AAA. You know, Stowers has no issue where he's going to be sent down to AAA. He can play a little freer. It's some environment, but I could see a world where a year from now we get a full sample size from both and we can pivotally say like Kyle Stowers is the better player. Kjerstad was, and everyone would agree, the better prospect the entire time in the minors, and things like this happen, and we'll certainly keep our eye on that to see who turns out to be the better player. Milo wants a very fast bullpen ranking. Yeah, I haven't done the bullpen trust power rankings very recently. Okay, we can do a super, super quick one here. It won't involve stats and won't do a deep dive into how exactly guys have been pitching over the past couple of weeks, which is usually how I sort things out in terms of who I'm trusting right now versus what their seasonal stats look like over the entire year. Yeah, let's do a quick version of the bullpen trust power rankings. I would say trust category right now, Brian Baker has looked great. Gregory Soto, it's up and down, but I still trust him as the top lefty at this point. And Andrew Kittredge, yeah, it was one outing, but throw him in there. Throw Andrew Kittredge into trust for me. Like that's my top three in trust. Maybe trust is Yennier Cano. It's been 4 or 5 rough outings over the past couple of weeks. Maybe trust is Felix Bautista. 4 straight outings with at least 1 earned run allowed. I need to see him kind of kick it back into gear to get himself back into the trust category. Sir Anthony Dominguez, the stuff looks great, but the walk rate is still insane. So I'd put him near the top of maybe trust at this point. Cionel Perez has been good enough to be in maybe trust. So you know what? Cionel Perez, congratulations. You are back into maybe trust. And then I guess we'll count Charlie Morton, he'll be in maybe trust as well. I don't really know like what exactly we're counting as Morton's role at the moment, because he was in the bullpen and then he was named as a starter for this weekend, and then the doubleheader came up and now he's not a probable starter, at least at this very moment. So kind of yo-yoing between the bullpen and the rotation right now. But that would be, Milo, my very quick, unprepared version of the bullpen trust power rankings. Keep the questions coming. Going to take one quick break here and come back and answer more of your Orioles questions here on this live mailbag episode. It is a live mailbag episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast right here on our Locked On Orioles YouTube page. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We continue getting to your questions here. Just put them in the chat function right here on YouTube. We'll try to answer almost every question that is out there. Raven Lunatic with a question here. Do the Orioles need to operate as though they can't bank on Grayson Rodriguez? The injury problems are starting to become troubling for his reliability. That is absolutely the case. And I'm going to take this question as in what they do this offseason, because for this year, who knows if Grayson's going to come back, but it's also kind of a lost season at this point. So I'll take the question from the terms of how they address the rotation in the offseason, how they think about Grayson. You can't throw him to the side Hunter Harvey style yet, where you just expected Harvey to be injured every single season, but you also can no longer trust that you're going to get even 25 good starts out of Grayson Rodriguez. You have to trust that, hey, we think we'll get 15 good starts out of Grayson Rodriguez this year. That's about half a season. And then other than that, who knows? So you have to at least backfill for that. And if he turns it around and he gets better health as the career goes on, you can take him off that list. But right now, I think, yes, you have to operate as if you can't bank on him to be good and healthy throughout the entire season. And you have to have backup plans for him across the board. Let's see. What do we have here? Titanium Melon with a question. Any word about Adam Jones? I haven't heard much about him lately. He's working in the front office. He's not full-time in Baltimore still, I don't think. He lives in Barcelona, I believe. It's more of a figurehead kind of PR role, but I'm sure he does have some input into some things that go on in the front office, but I don't think he's in every meeting with Mike Elias. Is just kind of a guy who is definitely good to be in that organization. He's a Orioles legend. I think he can help them as well. Question here from 18 Wheel. What about Shane Mlanahan? Well, in terms of trading for Shane Mlanahan, yeah, the Rays might be sellers. They haven't been great, and Mlanahan is not a free agent until after 2027, but he's also injured again. He was throwing from 60 feet a couple of weeks ago. That's kind of the latest update, but his timetable's just kind of up in the air in terms of when he will come back for the Rays, and that's not really something the Orioles probably want to invest in right now. Is another pitcher with a lot of injury questions, so probably not this year, but maybe if he gets healthy in the second half, that's somebody they could target in the offseason to trade. I would definitely be down for a Shane Mlanahan deal. Steven with a question. Is this the year we can finally get an arm in the first round of the draft? Steven, I wouldn't hold my breath, but what I will say is the Orioles have 3 of the first, I believe, 32 selections in the draft. I think they have 19, 31, and 32. I would doubt with 19 they take a pitcher, but look at those 31 and 32 picks. They're like compensation picks after the first round. They're somewhat grouped in with first rounders, but not like a true to the form first round pick. That is where I would think that I think Michael Elias is actually going to take his highest pitcher in the draft ever with either those 31st or 32nd picks. Those are the 2 comp picks the Orioles got for Corbin Burns and Anthony Santander signing elsewhere this offseason. Wrapped in Sports, the question, should the Orioles trade everyone who's on an expiring deal? They should at least kick the tires on it. I don't think they will trade everyone on an expiring deal. You're looking at O'Hearn and Mullins and Ramon Laureano and Gary Sanchez, the biggest names on the hitting side. And then you're looking at pitching-wise, Zach Eflin, Tomoyuki Sugano, Gregory Soto, and Sir Anthony Dominguez are the big ones on the pitching side. Some of those guys I think they should try to extend. Mullins, O'Hearn, Sugano, Eflin, they should at least kick around the idea of bringing them back on an extension. But if they can't get that worked out, those are all guys that have trade value, and they should definitely be potentially looking to move and get some value back at the deadline with this kind of lost season. Let's see. Carol with another question. Who of the core group, Rutschman, Henderson, Holiday, Mullins, Mountcastle, O'Hearn, Westberg, Cowser, will not be with the Orioles next season? My guess would be, well, Mullins and O'Hearn are free agents, so they are the two most likely to not be with the team next year. I think there's a chance the Orioles bring back one of the two. Mullins probably provides more value overall and is more needed on this team in center field. I'm not sure if Enrique Bradfield will be ready next year, but O'Hearn has just been such a good hitter. It's going to be hard to be without him in the lineup, but he is easier to replace as kind of a first base DH type. So I would say one of Mullins and O'Hearn is definitely gone, and there's a really good chance Ryan Mountcastle is not on this team. Otherwise, most of that group is going to be back. Jeff with a question here. What does it take, if anything, to unlock Kobe Mayo? I think it's going to take two things. One, a long runway of playing time at the big league level. I said it earlier this week. I don't care what it takes, third base, first base, DH, whatever. Give him a month. Just give him a straight month where he's playing, 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7 games every single week, facing lefties, righting. It's all big league pitching. With this season kind of out of it at 16-32, this is your time to give Mayo that runway. I still have a lot of promise and a lot of expectations for him as a prospect and as a big league player eventually. I think it's just going to be about pitch selection and getting a runway and really getting a long chance to work through his issues at the big league level, because the struggle in the big leagues, crush AAA, struggle in the big leagues, crush AAA yo-yo can only be done so many times. It's not really going to help him anymore. He just needs to struggle at the big leagues and work through it up here, like Holiday's been able to do eventually, like Henderson was able to do, like Rutschman, like Cowser, like Westberg were all able to do. He needs that runway at some point this year, and that should be able to unlock him. Luke with a question kind of similar to one from earlier. Is there any realistic way you see us getting back to maybe just contending for a wild card spot? If so, what needs to go right? Again, Fangraphs playoff odds are still at, if you round up, 2% for the Orioles right now. It is still just May 22nd. There is still a possibility there. But really for the Orioles, I mean, they need to get healthy. They need Westberg and Cowser both, and ONeal all back and all producing in that lineup. They need Adley to be Adley again. And they just need better starting pitching, whether that's Bradish and Rodriguez and Wells coming back and fixing things, or that is the likes of Kramer and Povich and those guys just pitching better for this team. It needs to be better, consistent starting pitching, and they need healthy Westberg, Cowser, ONeal to hit. And they can turn it around. It's not impossible, but it's just such a large hole that they had dug themselves at this point. Let's see, we got a few more questions we can get to here before we wrap things up. Alexander with a question here. Which position players are most likely to be traded by the deadline, in my opinion? I would say number one is Ramon Laureano. He's a veteran who's really producing well. He's on a 1-year cheap deal. Teams are always looking for, right-handed platoon bats who can play the outfield at the deadline. Ramon Laureano is kind of the perfect guy to be moved. He probably won't bring back a lot, but he's not really part of the Orioles' future. I think he's an auto getting traded at the deadline. Then number two would be Ryan O'Hearn. If the O's aren't going to bring him back, somebody's really going to want him. And then number three would be Cedric Mullins. Again, if they're not able to bring him back, there's not usually a lot of good full-time center fielders available at the trade deadline. Mullins would be one of them. I think a team would actually overpay to get Cedric Mullins, which certainly could help the Orioles. Question here from Justin. When does Cameron Weston have a legit chance of being called up from Norfolk? Cameron Weston, who's been pretty good in his last couple of starts in AAA Norfolk. That's where he began this year. 24-year-old right-hander, the number 14 prospect in the Orioles system, according to Fangraphs. 8th-round pick out of Michigan back in 2022. Funky arm angle, good sinker, good changeup, breaking balls. It's not the greatest stuff. It's not the greatest velocity, but it's just so much funk that it can really confuse hitters. I don't think we're just yet ready for Weston. Like, there's guys ahead of him, Chase McDermott, Trevor Rogers. If Luis F. Castillo gets healthy, and then you're getting into the range of maybe Grayson Wells, Bradish being back at some point. But I would say we get towards August and September, and the Orioles are still starving for starting pitching. If Cameron Weston's pitching well in AAA, there's a chance you would get some sort of late season call-up. 18 Wheel with another question. Do you think Tyler ONeal exercises his option to leave? Remember, ONeal signed that 3-year deal this offseason with a player option after year one. I think no. I think, and again, it's only been 2 of the 6 months of the season, so he could certainly turn it around, but it's been injuries and ineffectiveness for ONeal. If this is kind of generally how his season goes, he's not going to opt out. He's going to opt into guaranteeing himself that $50 million over the 3 years instead of testing the market after a bad season. Like, he was a free agent after a good season in Boston last year, and he got a solid little contract. He does not want to go back on the market, I wouldn't think, after a bad season. We'll see how the next 4 months play out, but at this point, I would have to think he would opt in at this point. Raven Lunatic with another question. Do the Rockies break the White Sox record for worst team in baseball history? Yes. Like, this, you think the Orioles are bad? This Rockies situation is really sad. I believe they lost again to the Phillies earlier today on Thursday. They got mopped by Philadelphia. I think that puts them at 8-42. This might be the worst team ever. Wrapped in Sports, the question, what's your dream rest of the season seller's outlook? It's that the Orioles sell on some of their expiring contracts. They hit on those trades. They hit on a Aroldis Chapman for Cole Reagans type trade that the Royals did a couple of years ago. And then they play well down the stretch still and get some momentum heading into 2026. Sorry, I got to take a drink of water here. That'll do it for today's mailbag episode. Thank you so much for sending in your question. You can always send them to lockedonorioles@gmail.com. Orioles and Red Sox this weekend. I will be back on Monday to recap the 4-game set. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.